Amara Sterling was no stranger to perilous missions, but this one felt different. As a veteran space explorer, she had faced black holes, asteroid storms, and alien encounters, yet the loss of the Celestial Dawn gnawed at her. It wasn't just a search for a missing ship. It was a search for lost friends and colleagues, a painful reminder of how vulnerable even the most advanced technology could be in the vast unknown. As she geared up for this mission, she couldn't shake the feeling that this journey would change her forever. Setting out on her solitary expedition, Amara chose the Amazon rainforest as her base of operations. Ancient and enigmatic, the rainforest was a challenging place even for an experienced explorer like her. She maneuvered her ship, the Starlight Venture, into a safe landing spot near a thick, dense canopy, and stepped out into the humid, verdant world. The sights, sounds, and smells of the jungle engulfed her senses, almost overwhelming. Above her, towering trees reached out like arms shielding secrets from the sky, while below, unfamiliar flora twisted around her boots as she made her way deeper into the wilderness. Every step Amara took was a reminder of the Earth's beauty and danger. Giant ferns brushed against her suit, insects hummed in rhythmic, otherworldly patterns, and strange cries echoed from the depths of the forest. She knew she was an intruder in this ancient ecosystem. The rainforest was timeless and indifferent to her quest. Despite the oppressive heat and the weight of her mission, she pushed forward, determined to follow the faint signal that her ship's scanners had picked up days earlier. Her instincts told her that this was not just a wild chase. Something lay hidden in the heart of this jungle, waiting for her. Hours into her journey, just as fatigue began to claw at her resolve, Amara felt a presence nearby. She turned, hand on her sidearm, her senses alert. Movement in the shadows caught her eye. At first, she thought it might be one of the jungle's natural predators, but then she saw a flash of silver, a glint that didn't belong to any creature she'd studied. Her heart raced as the figure stepped into a shaft of light filtering through the trees. A slender, regal being stood before her, cloaked in silvery scales that shimmered with every movement. The figure's eyes, a deep shade of violet, were filled with caution and pain. It took a moment for Amara to realize that this was no ordinary alien. She was in the presence of someone important. Nissa, the alien introduced herself softly, her voice barely audible above the jungle's ambient sounds. Nissa was a mystery, a scarred, vulnerable figure, wrapped in the tattered remains of royal garments. The markings on her skin told stories Amara could only guess at. There was fear in her eyes, but also a flicker of defiance. Amara's gaze was drawn to a jagged scar running down Nissa's cheek, a painful reminder of battles fought and wounds endured. She was not here by choice, that much was clear. But what fate had led her to the Earth's most remote wilderness? "Are you alone?" Amara asked cautiously, realizing that Nissa's appearance was more than an anomaly. It was a distress signal of its own. The alien princess hesitated, casting a glance over her shoulder, as though expecting something or someone to emerge from the shadows. In a voice tinged with fear and urgency, she whispered, "They're coming. They won't stop until they find me." Amara's instincts sharpened. Whoever they were, it was clear that Nissa was in danger. In her years of exploration, she'd seen political conflicts play out among alien species, power struggles as ancient as time itself. But this felt different. She sensed that Nissa was carrying a secret, a burden that could change the course of her own mission and perhaps the fate of her world. Choosing to help Nissa wasn't a decision made lightly, but Amara saw something in her eyes, something fragile and rare. Nissa's pain echoed the loneliness she had often felt in the depths of space. Without a second thought, Amara extended her hand, offering a silent promise of protection. They traveled together, moving cautiously through the underbrush, each step taking them closer to an uncertain future. Amara felt a protective instinct stirring within her as she shielded Nissa from the more hostile aspects of the Earth's ecosystem. Together, they maneuvered through narrow pathways, ducked under ancient vines, and pushed past dense thickets. Nissa's gaze darted around constantly, as if haunted by shadows that only she could see. Their shared journey fostered an unexpected understanding. Though they came from worlds light years apart, they found common ground in their solitude and their need for sanctuary. As they moved, Amara shared fragments of her story of the celestial dawn and her relentless search for answers. Nissa listened with a quiet intensity occasionally, nodding as if to acknowledge Amara's strength and purpose. But it wasn't long before Nissa revealed fragments of her own story, piecing together a tapestry of betrayal and fear. She spoke of her people, a warrior, race driven by conquest and vengeance. As their princess, she was once a symbol of hope, yet now she was a fugitive, pursued for reasons that remained shrouded in mystery. "They believe I betrayed them," she whispered one night as they sheltered beneath a canopy of stars, her voice filled with sorrow. "But I only wanted peace." Amara's mind raced with questions, but she respected Nissa's guardedness, recognizing the pain woven into her words. Trust between them grew slowly, built through small acts of kindness and quiet conversations beneath the dense foliage. Amara could see the weight of Nissa's past haunting her, yet also sensed a resilience, a flicker of courage that had survived whatever horrors she had endured. Yet, amidst this growing bond, Amara was reminded of the looming threat that Nissa had alluded to. Each night, as they made camp, she felt eyes watching from the darkness. The jungle seemed to whisper warnings, the rustling of leaves like voices speaking in an ancient tongue, cautioning them to tread lightly. They both knew that Nissa's pursuers were close, and each passing moment was borrowed time. In the final days of their trek, the signal from the celestial dawn grew stronger. Amara's excitement surged as the promise of answers drew nearer, but she was also filled with dread, knowing that whatever awaited them at the end of this journey would determine not just her fate, but Nissa's as well. Standing on the edge of a mist-filled clearing, Amara turned to Nissa, who met her gaze with a steady resolve. In that moment, an unspoken promise passed between them. They would face whatever lay ahead together, bound by trust and a shared purpose that transcended the differences of their worlds. Days had passed since Amara and Nissa first joined forces, each sharing fragments of themselves. As they moved closer to the celestial dawn, as they journeyed together, Amara became increasingly aware of the haunting weight Nissa carried, burdens of her past and the secrets she guarded so tightly. One evening, as they sheltered beside a crackling fire, the air thick with the scent of moss and earth, Amara finally asked the question that had lingered on her mind. "Nissa," she said, her voice quiet, "why did they send you away? What did you do that made your people turn on you?" Nissa's face tensed, her violet eyes dimming as if memories she'd rather forget surfaced against her will. She was silent for a long time, her gaze fixed on the flickering flames. Finally, she spoke, her voice laced with sorrow and defiance. "My people, they're warriors, conquerors. From the moment we're born, we're trained to believe that power is our destiny, that our race was meant to rule over others. And I was no different. As a princess, I was raised with these beliefs drilled into me. But as I grew older, I began to question it all, the cruelty, the endless wars, the suffering we caused." Nissa paused, her expression one of both pain and pride. "I didn't know what peace looked like, but I knew I wanted it for my people. I thought, as princess, I could help them see that conquest wasn't our only path. I didn't realize that even speaking of peace would be seen as treason." Amara listened in silence, a sense of admiration mingling with sympathy. She could see the cost of Nissa's defiance etched in. The scars on her skin, in the haunted look in her eyes. It was clear that Nissa's vision for her people had come at a great personal price. They wanted to make an example of me, Nissa continued, her voice trembling with the memory. My own father, the king, condemned me. He called me a traitor, accused me of betraying our people's heritage. I was forced to flee, hunted across star systems by my own kin. That's when I learned of the conspiracy and alliance my father had made with something dark. Amara's brow furrowed. What kind of alliance? Nissa's gaze shifted to Amara, her expression grave. An alliance with an entity our people call the Voidwalker. It's a being of unimaginable power, one that feeds on fear, chaos, and suffering. In exchange for dominion over more worlds, my father agreed to help this creature infiltrate Earth and destroy its people. The Voidwalker's presence will only grow stronger the more fear it spreads. Humanity, with its hope and resilience, threatens its very existence. Amara felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard legends of beings like the Voidwalker in her travels, creatures that existed in the spaces between worlds, drawn to destruction like moths to flame. But she had never expected to face one so close to home, nor to hear that Earth itself was in its sights. So your father, Amara began, struggling to grasp the enormity of it. He's planning an invasion to destroy Earth and enslave its people? Nissa nodded, a look of determination hardening her features. He believes it's the only way to ensure our people's survival. But it's not just a matter of conquest. My father sees humanity as a threat too. Our empire's control over the galaxy. If Earth stands, others will resist. The Voidwalker promised him victory, and in return, Earth will be consumed. I left because I couldn't be part of that. I couldn't watch an entire species annihilated for our so-called destiny. Amara's mind raced, piecing together what this meant. She had long suspected that alien life forms might view Earth with hostility, but this was something else, a conspiracy involving not just one race, but a cosmic force that thrived on fear and darkness. Her heart pounded as she realized the gravity of Nissa's words. They'll stop at nothing to find you then, Amara murmured, understanding now the relentless pursuit Nissa faced. You're a symbol of hope to those who want change, a threat to those who don't. But why did you come to Earth? It's dangerous for you here. Nissa hesitated, her expression softening. I came to warn humanity. I didn't know if I'd survive, but I had to try. Earth is more than just a world to conquer. It's the heart of something greater, something that defies the Voidwalker's influence. Your people have a light that my kind has forgotten. If I can help preserve that, then maybe there's still hope for my people too. A new understanding passed between them. Amara had always been driven by duty, by a sense of loyalty to her crew into the lost celestial dawn. But in this moment, she realized that her mission was much larger than finding her lost comrades. She was now part of a battle that extended beyond the stars, a struggle against an ancient darkness. The firelight flickered, casting shadows over Nissa's face as she spoke. My father's forces are ruthless, but I am not without allies. Among my people, there are those who want change, who believe that peace with other worlds is possible. They've kept me hidden when they could, supplied me with what I needed to reach Earth, but their power is limited. If I'm captured, it could mean the end of any hope for peace. Amara reached across, placing a steady hand on Nissa's shoulder. Then we won't let them capture you. We'll expose this conspiracy, show humanity the truth. Your voice, Nissa, could change the fate of both our worlds. Together, they began planning their next steps, charting out how they could expose the Voidwalker's influence before it was too late. Nissa shared details of her people's communication networks, the symbols and codes that marked their secret correspondences. Amara, in turn, explained Earth's channels for spreading information, the ways they could alert leaders to the impending threat. It was a fragile plan, relying on the hope that humanity would listen and unite in the face of the unknown. Yet, even as they planned, Amara sensed the shadows closing in. She knew that the jungle they'd found refuge in was no longer safe. The Void Walker's influence was likely spreading among the alien forces already on Earth. Sensing Nissa's presence and drawing closer each day, with each passing moment, the conspiracy grew tighter around them. But in those tense hours, Amara also felt a growing respect and admiration for Nissa. She saw in the alien princess a resilience born from hardship, a warrior's spirit tempered by compassion. Nissa had risked everything: her family, her people, her life for a chance to prevent the devastation that awaited humanity. In a world where trust was a luxury, Amara found herself placing her faith in Nissa. As dawn approached, the fire dying to embers, Amara felt a renewed sense of purpose. The conspiracy they faced was terrifying in its scale, but she was no longer facing it alone. With Nissa by her side, she believed they could unravel the darkness that threatened both their worlds. It was a mission that extended beyond starships and survival. It was a fight for hope, a stand against a tyranny that sought to consume everything she held dear. In the early morning light, they set off once more, their path uncertain, but their resolve unshaken. As they moved deeper into the wilderness, they each carried the weight of their mission, bound by a shared purpose that defied the differences of their origins. Amara glanced at Nissa, a silent promise in her eyes. Together, they would face the shadows that lurked in the depths of the universe. Together, they would fight to preserve a future where trust and peace could flourish, even in the face of the Void Walker's consuming darkness. The jungle had grown quieter, almost unnaturally so, as if the forest itself sensed the dark presence closing in on them. For days, Amara and Nissa had been moving cautiously, always aware of the imminent threat. Amara's senses were heightened, and she could feel an otherworldly tension hanging thick in the air, a tension that seemed to grow stronger each night. Nissa, too, was quieter, her normally calm demeanor strained with worry as she looked over her shoulder, as if expecting something monstrous to appear at any moment. One evening, as they rested by a river, Nissa's usually calm voice trembled as she said, "He's close, Amara. I can feel his presence, the dragon. He's relentless." Amara's face hardened with determination, but worry gnawed at her. She had heard of the Void Walker's dragons, powerful enforcers, sent to hunt down traitors and rebels among Nissa's people. This dragon was different from the mythical creatures of Earth's folklore. It was a being engineered to hunt, infused with the dark energy of the Void Walker. It had no loyalty, no mercy, and no weakness except its undying fixation on its target. They moved swiftly, but it wasn't long before the faint rumble of wings in the distance reached their ears. The ground beneath them seemed to shudder, as if in recognition of the deadly being approaching. Nissa's face was pale, and for a moment Amara saw a flash of vulnerability, a hint of the fear she'd been holding back. "Amara," Nissa began, her voice steady despite her terror, "if anything happens to me, you have to keep going. My people, they'll need someone to speak for them. And humanity needs to know about the Void Walker." Amara shook her head. "I didn't come this far to leave you to that monster. We're in this together. If the dragon wants you, he'll have to go through me first." Nissa gave a sad smile, her eyes softening. "That's what I was afraid you'd say." Suddenly, the sky darkened, the sun blotted out as a shadow descended over them. Amara barely had time to react before the dragon burst into view, a massive reptilian form with scales that shimmered like metal and eyes that burned with an unnatural violet light. Its wings stretched wide, casting an ominous silhouette against the twilight, and its breath, steaming and hot, filled the air with the scent of decay. With a swift, terrifying motion, the dragon swooped down, knocking them both off their feet. Nissa scrambled to her knees, pulling Amara behind a thick tree, her eyes wide with fear. She took Amara's hand, squeezing it hard. "This isn't just a creature, Amara. It's a weapon. My father sent it to punish me, to make an example of me. I'm its target, but it will stop at nothing." Amara's mind raced as she took in the enormity of the creature they were facing. She had fought many battles, faced dangers across galaxies, but nothing like this. The dragon's eyes were fixed on Nissa, a burning intensity that made Amara realize it was almost as if the creature could sense her very life force. This wasn't just a chase. It was a hunt, and Nissa was its prey. Before she could think, the dragon opened its mouth and exhaled a thick purple mist. Nissa screamed, clutching her arm as the mist wrapped around her like a shroud, paralyzing her with a powerful venom. Amara grabbed her, pulling her out of the mist's reach, but Nissa's breathing was labored, her body shuddering from the poison coursing through her veins. "Nissa!" Amara shouted, panic overtaking her as she watched her friend's skin take on a ghostly pallor. "It's the poison of immortality," Nissa managed to say. "My people call it the elixir of shadows. It grants life, but at a terrible cost, eternal suffering. It's meant to be punishment, not a gift." Amara's heart clenched at the thought, to be given immortality as a curse to live forever in pain, unable to escape. The dragon was not just sent to kill Nissa. It was here to trap her in an eternity of torment. She could see the desperation in Nissa's eyes, the horror of a fate worse than death. Gathering her resolve, Amara tightened her grip on Nissa's hand. "Not today," she whispered fiercely. "I won't let this thing take you." With that, she stood, her gaze fixed on the dragon. She didn't have a weapon capable of defeating it, but she knew Nissa's immortality could be a double-edged sword. If she could somehow harness it, she might be able to turn the dragon's power against itself. Gritting her teeth, she searched her pack, pulling out a vial of serum she had kept for emergencies, a strong stabilizer used to counteract alien toxins. She quickly injected the serum into Nissa's arm, hoping it would buy them some time. Nissa's breathing steadied, her eyes gaining focus once more, though she was still Amara weak. Helped her to her feet, both of them glancing warily at the dragon circling above. "Listen," Amara said, her tone urgent. "I need you to trust me. We're going to make it think it's won, that it's delivered its curse. Once it believes you're helpless, we'll strike." Nissa nodded, though fear still shone in her eyes. They lay back against the damp forest floor, pretending to succumb to the dragon's assault. Slowly, the massive creature descended, convinced that its mission was. The dragon's head lowered, and it let out a low, guttural growl. Amara met its gaze, unflinching. She knew that even a second's hesitation would mean certain death. With a flash of movement, she lunged at the dragon's snout, driving the needle with the last of the stabilizer serum into its flesh. The dragon reared back, roaring, its eyes flashing in pain and confusion. Amara seized the moment to pull Nissa up, and together they bolted through the jungle. But the dragon was not defeated. With a scream of fury, it pursued them, tearing through trees and underbrush in a blind rage. Every instinct in Amara's body told her to run, but she knew they couldn't outrun it forever. Turning to face the beast, she held up her hands, hoping to draw its focus away from Nissa. "Come on," Amara shouted, her voice defiant. "Got?" The dragon lunged, its claws flashing. Amara darted to the side, barely evading the strike. She saw Nissa out of the corner of her eye, her friend, struggling to stand, to fight despite her weakened state. With a final burst of energy, Nissa lifted her hands, channeling the immortal power forced upon her by the dragon's venom. To Amara's amazement, a wave of energy pulsed from Nissa's palms, knocking the dragon back. They pressed their advantage, driving the creature into a retreat. Amara moved with Nissa's energy, coordinating each strike to keep the dragon at bay. After what felt like an eternity, the beast finally stumbled, its fierce gaze dimming as it retreated into the forest, defeated for now. Exhausted and battered, Amara and Nissa fell to the ground. The jungle was eerily quiet, for breath, as if the entire forest held its breath in reverence for the fierce battle that had just taken place. They lay there, side by side, staring up at the darkening sky. "Thank you," Nissa whispered, her voice barely audible. Everything. Amara turned to her, a small smile playing on her lips. "We're not done yet, but I'll be by your side until the end, Nissa. We'll face whatever comes next together, the scars from the final battle with the dragon still marked the earth, a reminder of the fierce struggle Amara and Nissa, bruised and had endured. They had emerged victorious, standing side by side as they looked into the horizon, each carrying the weight of a future filled with both hope and uncertainty. Yet, something fundamental had shifted, not just within themselves, but in the very course of history, as they had done the unthinkable, forged a bond of trust. As dawn crept over the dense forest, Nissa spoke softly, her voice filled with the quiet resolve that had come to define her. "We've survived together. We've fought side by side. Now, it's time to make sure this peace lives on." Amara nodded, her eyes reflecting the shared determination. She had come to see Nissa not just as an ally, but as a sister in arms, bound by a purpose that transcended even the boundaries of their vastly different worlds. Their journey had brought them here, to the edge of possibility, and now their mission was to bring that possibility to life. The first steps toward unity. Their first destination was the Federation's outpost. On Earth, a towering structure nestled within the mountainous regions. Amara had called in a favor from her closest allies in the Federation to arrange a discreet meeting, hoping that by presenting Nissa's story and their alliance, they could sow the first seeds of peace. As they approached the outpost, Nissa's anxiety was evident, and Amara could sense the hesitation in her movements. It wasn't just the fear of rejection. Nissa was well aware of the centuries of animosity between her people, the Voidwalkers, and humans' history of aggression and territorial ambition had left deep scars on Earth's collective memory. Will they see me as a monster? Nissa's voice trembled slightly, the weight of her lineage bearing down on her. Amara turned to her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're not defined by your past, Nissa. You've proven that to me, and together we'll prove it to them." The Federation leaders listened intently as Amara recounted their journey, her voice strong and unwavering as she shared the story of Nissa's bravery and the unexpected bond. She emphasized how Nissa had risked her life, time and again, to seek a peaceful path instead of succumbing to her people's cycle of vengeance. Nissa took a deep breath and spoke, her voice clear and filled with sincerity. "I am not here to represent the violence of my people. I am here to offer a different path to show that we too are capable of change." This bond between Amara and me is proof that even the greatest of divides can be bridged. The Federation leaders remained silent, their expressions a mix of skepticism. After a lengthy and intrigue, one of the senior officers leaned forward, addressing Nissa's directly. He began, his gaze sharp. "Then it's time to take the first real steps. If you wish for peace, there will need to be sacrifices on both sides. The Federation has little trust in your people, but perhaps, with you as an ambassador, we could begin A spark of hope ignited in Nissa's eyes. The journey would be long and fraught, with challenges, but it was a start. She accepted the Federation's terms, pledging to serve as a bridge between her people and humanity. They agreed on a provisional peace, allowing for monitored exchanges and negotiations under Nissa's watchful eye. The ambassador's journey. Over the following months, Nissa became a symbol of hope and unity. Her presence sparked curiosity and, eventually, cautious respect among both humans. She traveled across different star systems, sharing stories of Earth's resilience, its history of war and peace, and the hope role that she as an ambassador had ignited was not without struggles. While she had convinced many within the Federation of her sincerity, there were those who remained wary, questioning her motives. The wounds of past conflicts ran deep, and the distrust was palpable, especially among families who had lost loved ones in previous skirmishes. Nissa faced opposition within her own ranks as well. Her decision to stand beside humanity angered certain factions of her people who saw her alliance as a betrayal. Some even plotted against her, attempting to undermine her authority and sabotage her stood efforts, firm, using her words as weapons and her compassion as armor. With every interaction, every council meeting, she made it clear that she was committed to a future where humans and voidwalkers could coexist. Always by her side, became her confidant and advisor, providing invaluable insight into human perspectives and, together, navigating the complexities of interstellar diplomacy. But their bond only grew stronger. They often shared moments of quiet laughter, finding solace in each other's company amidst the pressures of their shared mission. A peace tested by adversity. Their progress toward peace reached a turning point when a rogue faction of voidwalkers attacked a Federation vessel, threatening to unravel all that Nissa and Amara had worked for. The incident caused an uproar across human-controlled territories, with demands for retaliation echoing in the halls of the Federation. Nissa was devastated, feeling as though her efforts had been shattered in an instant. But Amara urged her to hold her ground, reminding her that true peace was never easy to achieve. It required endurance and the courage to face setbacks. Determined to prove her commitment, Nissa personally intervened, meeting with the leader of the rogue faction. The encounter was tense, with Nissa facing a barrage of accusations. She stood her ground, using her story as a testament to the potential for change. She pleaded for patience and understanding, ultimately convincing the faction leader to lay down their arms and join the peace. The Federation leaders were impressed by her bravery and resilience, and the incident, though a near disaster, ultimately strengthened her position in the aftermath. Between the two species, humans and voidwalkers saw her not just as a diplomat, but as a true leader willing to risk everything for the future of both worlds. A legacy of hope. Years passed, and Nissa's work as an ambassador flourished. She became a beacon of unity, her story an inspiration to countless others who sought a path away from conflict and toward cooperation. Her efforts led to the establishment of the Interstellar Council, a governing body that included representatives from both the Federation and Voidwalker territories, a symbol of the lasting peace that she and Amara had fought so hard to achieve. Nissa and Amara were celebrated as pioneers of peace, their story immortalized in song, art, and their legacy was not just in treaties signed or councils established, but in the hearts of the countless beings who believed that unity was possible. They became a symbol of what could be achieved when differences were set aside and people chose to look beyond the scars of the past. In her role, Nissa continued to educate her people about Earth and its rich cultures, building bridges through shared knowledge and experience. She visited Earth frequently, finding kinship in its diverse lands, and though her diplomatic duties took her to countless worlds, she and Amara always found time to reconnect, sharing stories of their latest adventures across stars. Years later, on the anniversary of their first encounter, Amara and Nissa stood side by side, gazing at the galaxy had changed because of them, and the future was brighter than it had ever been. They knew their work was far from over, but they also knew they would never face the future alone. Do you ever wonder, Amara mused, how things might have turned out if we hadn't met in that forest? Nissa smiled, her gaze soft as she looked at her friend. Meeting you is no accident, Amara. Our paths were always meant to cross. Sometimes the stars bring people together, for reasons beyond our understanding. The bond between them transcended words. It was a connection, forged through trust. Their friendship had become a symbol of hope, dreams, a testament to the possibility of peace across even the vastest distances. As they stood there, the stars stretching endlessly above, Nissa took Amara's hand, a quiet promise passing between them from different worlds, bound by fate, and an unbreakable trust, and together they would continue to guide the galaxy toward a shared future.